My name is Stephen Garrett. With over 20 years of experience in leadership, family, and ministry, I've asked some brothers to come join me and have a conversation of what it takes to bring balance to each. Why don't you join me on this journey? Let's go. Good evening. Hope everyone is doing good this evening. Hope you've had a phenomenal week. Last week, I hope church service was great this week. I'm going to come on for a quick moment. How's everyone doing tonight? How's everyone doing tonight? Wherever you're watching from, please let me know where you're watching from. Love to engage tonight. Had a thought that I wanted to share with you. And as we dive in tonight, I want to challenge you a little bit. I was having a conversation today that I kind of want to let you all in on, and if possible, get some feedback on tonight. How's everyone going? How's everyone doing tonight? How's everyone doing? What is going on with your day? How was worship? Let me know how worship was, where you worshiped at today. If you showed up in church, I pray you did. I pray you did. Let me know where you're watching from tonight as you're coming in. So I'm going to talk tonight for a quick moment from this thought. How do we navigate major disappointment in our lives when you experience loss? Like, what do we have to do? What do we have to look at, and what systems do we have to put in place if we're going to handle major disappointment in ministry, transition that happens in life? And I'll give you some context to this conversation. So part of the discussion comes from some things that have been happening at Bethlehem. So at the beginning of this year, we literally lost, so far, we have had a funeral every single month. We've lost somebody every single month at BMBC. And these are not people that are just tied to BMBC. You know, family members have lost family members at our church, but these are pivotal parts of our ministry that we have lost within the beginning of this year. Then I was talking to one of the leaders in our community. She owns a funeral home. And I was just asking her this week, I said, I was asking her the last funeral we had, how are you handling this? I said, I know y'all been having funerals week by week, month by month here at Bethlehem. I said, I'm about tired of seeing you all show up at Bethlehem. And this is what she shared with me. She said, Pastor Garrett, she said, I'm going to be honest with you. She said, you're not even the church that we've spent most of our time with. And I said, what do you mean? She said, we have consistently been at several churches way more than you this year. And so one church she's been there, and that was in March. She had been at that church over 10 times from January to March for funerals. And so it had me thinking, as I was having a conversation today, we lost a dear deacon, loved him. His sons came out to worship with us this morning. And I was talking to my associate. And as we were talking, I was just telling him how transition is hard for the body of Christ. When you are when you have the ability to see someone on a regular basis, hear their voice, or not even see them on a regular basis, but you know their presence is around and you're expecting to see them, transition can be hard. And later I was telling my wife, I said, one of the hardest things about transition, one of the hardest things about loss for the pastor is this: sometimes we don't feel like we're allowed to handle the same level of grieving that our members do, because these are their family members, right? We are in a unique situation to grieve with them, but sometimes we are not able in that moment, not because of the membership, but because of our role in leadership, to grieve to the same level. And so I want to talk to you tonight for a brief moment. I promise you it's not going to be long, about some things that I think can help us as we are navigating through the process of leadership and loss, how we can truly make it in make it to be a little bit more successful, and to go through this uh, with class and handle it without destroying ourselves in the process. So, as me and my wife were having this conversation, I said, I remember before the pandemic, we had several deaths in the church. I said during the pandemic, we had a few, but we were blessed during the pandemic not to deal with major loss. I said, this is a season that our church is experiencing. I believe in ups and flows. I believe in seasons. And I just truly believe that in my heart of heart, that there is seasons that churches go through of dealing with loss. My home church, Greater St. Mark, they have had within the last 3 months, I want to say 6 deaths, right? That I know of, and they may have had more. But there are seasons of transition that we have in ministry. And sometimes it is difficult to be a leader and to deal with those seasons of loss, because here's the reality. Your members are dealing with that loss, but you're dealing with that loss as well. And it had me go down the rabbit hole. You know the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole is when you see one thing that's happening, but it takes you to a level of many things that are happening. And I realized how many of us are not coping with the loss while we're leading. That we are literally trying to handle and navigate these major disappointments, these major hits that have happened to our ministry, to our churches, to our families, and still continue to serve the church with a level of decency, dignity, and here it is, dare I say, quality during that time of dealing with it. And so I remember when we were going through some of our challenges at church. We were trying to figure some things out about where the trajectory of the church was going, and some key folk started passing. And I asked the Lord, I'm like, Lord, what are you doing? These are people who are supporters. These are people that are raising are keeping their pastor encouraged. I'm trying to see, how am I going to navigate? How am I going to handle the loss? But here it is. Sometimes the loss is necessary for you to become the person that God is intending for you to be. Sometimes we can be dependent. Here it is. We can be dependent on the folk that we're losing, but not just the loss of life, right? Sometimes we're dealing with the loss of members of our church. We call it in leader circles the great exodus, when folk that you have led, folk that you have prayed for, folk that you've been there for their family, folk that you loved on, they are leaving the church in higher droves than you would expect. And you can't pinpoint what it is that is causing them to leave. So now you're questioning ministry, you're questioning your authenticity. You're questioning. Some may even question their call in that moment of them leaving. And that does not just happen in the church. That happens in the job. That is happening in many different spheres of life. And it does not mean that there is not something that you need to address. But the problem is you are having to deal with the loss while leading your people through the loss. I'll say that again. You're having to deal with the loss while leading your people through the loss. So, where does this? Where am I going with this? One of the things that I had to recognize was, and we're getting ready to go through a series on this. There is a need for healing in my church, not because my church is going through turmoil in the sense of fighting or infighting, but because we have taken hits this year. So this month we dealt with a series on surrender. And one of the reasons is because it is hard to trust God when you see yourself losing all the time. And you've been praying to God for him to keep some folk. You've been praying to God for him to heal some folk, and you get that call. It is hard to deal with that process of surrendering. And so I want to help us as we dive into this. I want to talk to the leader tonight. I want to talk to the leader and helpfully help some of the followers tonight. I want to talk to the leaders tonight, but I also want to help some of the followers tonight, because I believe that, as it says, we are having to navigate through the disappointment in our lives when we have experienced loss. But I also think that we have to deal with the ministry transitions. And before you think ministry transition means just leaving a church, which we're going to dive into this as well, because here's the reality. That is a loss as well. One of the struggles that I've dealt with in talking to pastors is when they start pastoring a new church. And here it is. The church is dealing with the loss of their former pastor, however that loss may have happened. And the pastor is dealing with the loss of their former church. And the folk that they have been used to seeing for so many odd years are no longer the folk that they see every Sunday morning. And we have some that make it seem like it's easy. They're able to transition, they're able to make moves, and you're wondering to yourself, how can they do it? But they're experiencing loss. So here's the 3 steps that I want to talk about tonight, and I'm not going to hold you long. We're getting ready. It's my baby's birthday, as many of you have seen, and we've spent the day together, but I want to make sure I just had this thought on my mind. I wanted to chime in with you all. So here it is. I think there's 3 action steps that leaders can take to handle experiencing these transitions in ministry, these ups and flows of ministry, these downward spirals sometimes of ministry that can help you lead effectively, efficiently. And here it is. That can help you stay within your own context of peace while leading. Here it is. The first one is acknowledge the hit. One of the things I had to get over was that I did not deserve to feel this way. That was one of the things that I had to allow myself to deal with, because sometimes we will feel as if we didn't lose as much as someone else. So how dare it affect me like someone else, right? We have lost, I said it in Bethlehem, we've had average right now, roughly, because we're going into the 5th month, we've had roughly about 1.25 of a death every month. So we're at about 6 deaths that we've had at Bethlehem through members, right? There is a level of weight that comes with bearing people over and over again. I'm telling you, even if you have some antagonists that you're bearing, and you are seeing the family that is mourning, grieving, and broken, and you see the love that this person, you hear the loving words that they have for this person, and you're wondering why you never saw it. There's a level of having to acknowledge that you've been hit in this season. And we can sometimes let pride get in our way and feel as if we should be able to handle the hit that we've had, when the reality is we have to be transparent and say, this one's not easy. This one's not easy. And what can that hit be? Again, that hit can be a physical person dying. But that hit could also be that someone that was a motivator, someone who was an encourager, someone who was a helper in ministry is no longer serving in your church. Pastor Mike Todd, however you feel about him, that's you, but I love his conversation. And I heard so many people condemn him for saying this, but this is the reality of many pastors. He was saying that there were some people that left the ministry because of the attacks that he was getting, and they agreed with some of the things that were being said, but he remembered paying bills for them, loving on them, praying with them. And he said this was hard. And I heard people attack him in that process. But how many of us can say that in ministry, there were some people that we depended on that left us, and now we're having to ask God to send us someone else? But here's the real hit. The real hit is when you find out that they may have been publicly supportive, but privately sniping. They may have been publicly encouraging, but privately hurting. And some of us, it is hard to acknowledge that in ministry, some things is not as easy as we want to just shake off. Some things are difficult to deal with the loss. Paul says in Philippians that I've learned how to be abased, I've learned how to be abound. He says, I've learned how to suffer in all things. He's giving praise to this church that has returned funding him. And he's like, not that I stood in need, because I've learned how to have and I've learned how not to have. The problem is we celebrate this as in a way to believe that he always had this mentality. He says, I've grown in the process of being able to handle lack and being able to be humble in surplus. Some of us, we are acting as if it does not bother us, but it's showing up in our ministry. It is showing up in our connections. There was a moment, again, I'm transparent with you all. I am transparent with you all. There was a moment in ministry that I just wanted to preach and get to the back. I wanted to change my clothes, get my check, go home. I'm telling y'all, it was a moment. I did not, because I had some strong leaders around me. I had some pastors that mentored me, called me out on my bull, talked to me, helped me through the process. But here it is. That does not change the fact that I wanted to. That does not change the fact that there were people that needed me in that season, and I did not want to be of assistance, even though I was. Because I had taken some hits, and I was bleeding while trying to be a blessing. I was trying to heal while hurting. I was trying to preach while in pain. And some of us have to be honest with ourselves and say, Pastor Garrett, Stephen, Reverend, whatever brother, whatever level you're on in this season, you have to be honest and say, that's me. I'm in the place where I want to serve. I want to love folk, but I'm still hurting. I'm still traumatized by the last time I let somebody in. Last time I let somebody in, I let them in, and here it is. Here's the truth of the matter is, they took my kindness for weakness. And now I'm shutting that door off. So the first thing is, we got to acknowledge the hit. The first thing is, we got to acknowledge the hit. The second thing that we got to hit is that not only must we acknowledge the hit, but we have to create vulnerable spaces. Can I tell you the biggest problem for leaders? I got some friends in corporate America that lead well. Have one entrepreneur owns a facility. He owns a care facility, and me and him talk on a regular basis. Got another friend. He is connected to hotels on a high level. I got another friend that he is starting a business. Multiple friends that are on high levels. Here's why I shared that with you. One of those friends shared with me, he said, I could not do what I do if I did not have a space where I could be honest with people. And can I tell you something? That space may not be your church. Oh, I'm going to say it. The space where you might have to, the space where you can be the most vulnerable may not be the space where you are doing the leading. Sometimes our biggest struggle is we are leading folk and we're trying to tell them about the pain we're suffering with. But here's the problem with that. We're also looking for them to do something. And so when they don't do it, it makes it harder for us to lead. Hear me. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be honest with our churches. I'm not saying you shouldn't be honest with your job. I'm not saying you shouldn't be honest with your spouse. I'm not saying you should not be vulnerable with these folk at all. What I'm saying is we are putting an unfair weight on folk when we are telling them what we're going through, but then we're expecting them to do something about it. And here's the problem. They may be suffering with it too. And so what I've discovered is when you create vulnerable spaces, you are handpicking folk that can handle your vulnerability. You are handpicking, you are selecting folk that can handle it. Now, hear me when I say you're selecting folk. That does not mean they take your bull. That means that you're using discernment to say, this person can see me weak and still know how to encourage me and still know that even though I'm at a place where I might not be pretty, that does not mean that I'm not perfecting. That God is not doing something in me, because in this season that I'm in an ugly season. I don't like people in this season. I don't care what you say. Not every pastor out there is going to always like folk. Not because they're not loving to folk, but because sometimes folk are unlikable. It is hard to like the person that is causing division in your marriage. It is hard to like the person who has lied on you in the past, and now you are trying to repair your character when you didn't do anything to destroy it in the first place. And you're having to deal with the loss of the respect some have had for you until, as one pastor said, you outlived the lie. It's hard to like those folk, right? So you have to create vulnerable spaces, places where you can come together, you can be with folk, you can communicate with folk, and here it is. While doing these things, you are with people that first can help you in your vulnerability or hear you in your vulnerability. Don't miss that. There's a difference between someone that is there that you can talk to, and someone that is there that is listening, that is there and allowing you to share what you don't understand in ministry. Share what you feel is unfair in ministry. Share what you feel is not kosher to say in ministry. It is okay to say that I have a group that they know my weaknesses, they know my flaws. One of the things that I have, there are some people when I am going through my worst seasons, I will send a text to. I sent one the other week here to a friend of mine, and this is all I said to him. I'm about to share what I prayed, what I sent to this friend. This is literally what I said. I said, hey bro, just asking you to lift me up in prayer today. Nothing to worry about, just need God to move in a special way. You want to know what he said? He did not come back to me and say, Rev, what's going on? Da, 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 da. He said, I hear you, man. I'm going into prayer now. That's it. That's it. What I needed in that season, when he heard me say nothing to worry about, he said, I got you. I'm going into prayer now. We need people that hear us. Sometimes I'm not there because I don't need you to tell me, well, listen, he who put his hands to the plow and turns back is not worthy for the fit for the kingdom. I know that already. Just got through preaching that. That's not my issue. My issue is I'm mad at God. And I realize that I can be mad at God and that still does not change him being God. And I'm kind of upset about that. I'm kind of upset that me being mad at God does not give the same impact as if I'm mad at my wife or mad at my brother or mad at my sister or mad at my mom or my dad. He doesn't have to come and stroke my ego and say, listen, I just want you to forgive me. He does not. That's not how God works. I need somebody that can say, hey, I am losing crucial people in my ministry and I don't know where I'm going wrong. And for them to be able to hear it is, they may have to call me out. Man, have you been listening, or are you having a pity party? Are you having a pity party in that season? Or are you listening to what God is saying? Have you talked to God about it, or are you complaining to God about it? You need some folk that you can be vulnerable with, honest with, and they can call you on your stuff. I had a friend, he was going through some marriage troubles. I won't go into the detail, but he was going to some marriage trouble. He called me and he was telling me what he was going through. And I said, man, you messed up. I said, you messed up. There are friends that have messed up that I have listened to them. And I have talked to them after, but they knew their mess. That was not the moment they needed me to hound on them about what they did wrong. But there were other friends that they hadn't been spending time with their wife. Wasn't even infidelity. One of my friends, he had gotten so caught up with ministry that he was consistently at the church for everything, but he wasn't present when his wife needed him. She was getting fed up. You can show up for sister so-and-so, and man, if you want to make a woman mad, you want to make your wife mad, show up for other women. She don't care if it's church. Show up for other women, but not be able to show up for her. There's an event going on. You're there for sister so-and-so. She don't care if she's 90, but you can't be there to take me out on a date. We hadn't been out on a date in years. I don't know what dancing is, but you tell the brothers in the church to make sure they take their wives out. You ain't taking me out. You gotta have a space where you can have somebody that's gonna be honest with you. So I told him, I said, man, you need to go, not only apologize, but this ain't no regular apology. You gotta go in and you gotta have the gift. You got to have the plan. You got to have you got to have a time and date set out. This can't be something that in the future we're going to do this, and you need to tell your church you're taking off. My exact word. I said, we're not talking about you tell them, listen, I might be taking off. You need to tell them next month we'll be gone for a week. We'll be gone for a week. We're gone. I holler at you. Because I had already asked him. I said, can you go on a vacation? He said, man, I got vacation time, but we got all this stuff going on in church. I said, you need to have a conversation with your deacons. Sit them down and be real with them as men and say, brethren, you all are married. You understand I need to take care of my household. I'll be gone for a week. Man, her getting that time away messed his mind up. He had a different wife, y'all. He had a different wife, but he had to come to me in a vulnerable situation and say, Stephen, I'm worried. But I had to be willing to hear, and then I had to be willing to help. I had to be willing to help. So the first thing is I got to acknowledge the hit. I got to acknowledge that I've lost some things in ministry. I've lost some people. I've lost some. I've lost some of my joy. I'm dealing with some stuff. I got to acknowledge the hit, but then I have to create a vulnerable space. Have to have a place where I can be vulnerable with people, and I have to realize that space here. Let me share this, and I've already been too long. I got to eat. Here it is. Eating way too late. Here it is. And get this. Do not miss this. I have to create vulnerable spaces. But while creating, I have to be willing to tell folk not everyone belongs there. Ooh. I love my deacons. Not every single one of my deacons belong in my vulnerable space. And I'm going to be honest with you. There's levels to the vulnerable space. There's certain things I'll tell my deacons, certain things I'll never tell my deacons. They're still the sheep. They help me to serve, but they're still sheep. How dare I bring sheep into shepherd conversations? Ooh. Did you hear me? How dare I bring sheep into shepherd conversations? There are conversations that the sheep may not be able to handle with the shepherd. I'm not talking about you're talking to the sheep about sheep. You're talking to shepherds about shepherding. And you can't be honest with the sheep all the time in the way you want to be honest. You got to tell some things to folk that know what you're going through. Sheep do not understand the wolves that they've allowed into the herd. So it looks as if you're being mean, but you're protecting them from the wolf. It looks as if you're trying to tell them that they can't go this way, but the Bible says he maketh me to lie down in green pastures. I'm trying to lead you to a place, and here it is. Some folk cannot belong in that vulnerable space. I will always remember, I went to Ralph West Conference, IC3 one year, and I remember during they were talking, the head of the finance department was talking about how they handle their yearly meeting of the finances. And someone raised the question, they said, so how do you handle with a church this size? How do you pass this out to all the members? Y'all have over 10,000 members. How do you pass out all this information? He said, not everyone sees all the information. He said, but y'all talk about being a transparent church. How can you be a transparent church and not everybody sees it? He said, this is how our meeting works. He said, every year, every member gets a package, if they want it, stating what our plans are for the year, how we plan on budgeting for the year. He said, but not every member gets to have a say on what's being budgeted. He said, we have members that make as low as 19,000, and we have as members that make as much and over 19 million. He said our budget for the year, our budget for the year is over $30 million. He said to have a say in how we handle the payouts. He said how we handle the payouts. He said to have a say in how we handle the payouts. He said you have to be able. He said now there are some that can say it. He said you have to be able to say that you have managed at least a $300,000 budget. He said and the problem is we have people. He said the first problem is we have sinners making saint decisions. I got to tell you this. He said we have sinners making saint decisions. He said, and the second thing, he said, we have folk that need to grow. He said, economically, mentally, financially, making impoverished decisions. He said, so the problem is we can't allow people that are living out their means, he said, to tell the church what to do in that moment. He said we had to bring our pastor. He said we have to make sure that our pastor is cared for. He said there are certain things that we do in the church. He said some of the members would never understand, but we're doing it to make sure that our pastor is cared for and he is able to be where he needs to be. He said these are small things. He said, and here it is, every member that manages a major company, he said, is the one who suggested it because they understand the task that goes on and that is needed to handle a congregation of this size. He says, how dare we allow people that have carnal minds to make Christ-like decisions? I said, ooh, that's good. Can I tell you the reason you got to create vulnerable spaces and not allow everyone in that vulnerable space is because not everyone can handle what you say, can handle that broken moment. Here's the last thing and I'm done. Not only must you be able to handle, not only must you be able to acknowledge the hit, create vulnerable spaces, but here's the last thing. Got to step away to serve. So this is a hard one because we as pastors a lot of times feel as a church is going through that we have to be present for everything. And I need to share with you that CEOs of companies have gotten it right and we've gotten it wrong. And it's biblical. It is biblical. The Bible says, and I got some Bible readers on here. I do believe it's John 8, but I'm about to find it for you all. No, it's not John 8. I'm about to find it for you all now. I'm about to find it for you all now. Here it is. The Bible says in Mark 1, 35 and 39 that Jesus would rise up early, great while before day and pray. I want to share with you that sometimes what we do is we keep driving, and we keep pushing, and we keep growing, and we keep going, and we're going. And here it is. You've been hit. You hadn't allowed yourself to be vulnerable. And now you are creating a narrative that you don't need rest. We will tell everyone to rest, and at the same time, we will be experiencing burnout. Can we be honest about it? We can't get mad at our churches for not acknowledging that we need vacation time. If you've never taken a vacation, I know a pastor right now who has served for 30 years. And out of those 30 years, he's only taken 3 vacations. No, he's only taken 5 vacations. Out of 30 years, he's only taken 5 vacations. And let me tell you what's not a vacation. I want to share this with you. National Baptist is not a vacation. I know you can utilize it as one, but it is not a vacation, especially when you got to give a report of everything you did. So you got to be at these meetings. It is not a vacation. National Baptist is not a vacation. I want to tell you what's not else is not a vacation. Your local conference is not a vacation. It's not. I got to tell you what else is not a vacation. If you are off from the church, but you got to be at work at the same time, you are not on vacation. You are just putting your attention in one specific area. I need you to understand that Jesus knew how to rest. How dare we think we're too good for it? Step away so you can serve. Allow yourself to heal from the hurt that you went through. Allow yourself time with the Lord that he can speak to you, fill you back up. Go to someone else's church and sit in the back of the audience. I always tell you all, back in 2018, I had to take a break away, and it was vital for me. I had to step away. Took 2 weeks off. For those 2 weeks, I went to another church that wouldn't have known who I was from Adam and Steve. Went stayed in the back, worshiped, enjoyed myself. And here it is. Someone came up because they said they knew I was a preacher. They said they just on you. But here it is. I just wanted to worship. I wanted God to speak to me. I was looking for a word for myself. I didn't want to preach, not because I didn't want to preach anymore. I just wanted to be filled up. And some of us, hear me, we feel as if I step away, I want to help somebody tonight. We feel as if I step away, that the church is going to fall. That problem is going to get so bad that it's not going to be resolved. I want to dive into that stepping away so you can serve one real quick, and then I'm done. Here it is. If you cannot step away so you can serve, and hear me, we got to be critical thinkers. Stepping away so you can serve needs to be planned out. I can't be in the middle of a sermon series and say, okay, I'm going to take 3 weeks off and I'm on sabbatical. I'm going to start this sermon series when I come back. We can't be in a major signing situation and say, I'm going to take off this week and we have to be there for meetings. Stepping away is me using wisdom and discernment and saying, okay, we know this is a major time in our church. So what we're going to do is this week, I'll be here. I'll be present. Every question we need to have, I'm putting people in place. This is the person you need to call when you can't get into pastor. I got a throwaway phone. Here it is. You get this number. You get this number. You get this number. Everyone doesn't have this number. This way, I know that if it is something that nobody else can handle but the pastor, you have access to me. But not everyone has access to me. Here it is. You got to be strategic in doing this. But hear me when I say this. If you cannot step away to serve, the wrong person's in the helm. I'll say it again, and I'm not going to apologize for this. If you cannot step away to serve, you are leading that church and God is not. The Bible is clear. He will take care of his church. And I have seen it time and time again where pastors that felt like that church was not going to make it have died. And guess what? That church kept going on. You are in the wrong, listen, you are in the wrong seat. I am not the head of the church. I am the under shepherd. I am only there to serve as thus saith the Lord. When my season is up, then my season is up. But while God has me there, I'm serving as he desires. But he also desires for me to rest. The Bible in essence says that Sabbath was given for man. Here it is. God has given it to you for you to get rest. He loves rest. While journeying, he gave his disciples rest. Why would we think that we have to keep driving and keep going and never take time to reflect what God is doing? Here's a question, and I'm getting ready to leave on this. As you've been experiencing loss, you're leading through loss. What's the objective of what God is allowing you to go through? And if that's what I've been praying in where I'm at right now. Lord, what are you showing Bethlehem, but also what are you showing me? What are you revealing to me in this season? One thing that I can tell you off rip, I know he's revealing. We need a better development process, because we cannot expect the church to progress like it needs to, and we have not thought about tomorrow. And the struggle that some of us are having is we are leaning on the old saints and we're not developing and cultivating the new ones. It is nothing wrong with leaning on the old saints, but it is something wrong with leaving a seat empty. Do you hear me? It is something wrong if we are not developing others to serve. That's what the Lord is showing me. That we got to do a better job. And we have phenomenal leaders at our church. But he's showing us in the matter of 5 months, you've lost 6 folk. Some not members, but here it is. You've lost 4 members. Now, our blessing is this. These members, we were able to start putting people in places to serve before they passed. But seeing how quickly we lost members is showing me we have to have better development process. And here's what development looks like. This is just what God has been talking to me about Bethlehem. Here it is. Development does not mean just because you're being developed, you're going automatically in service. We as a body of church have to be able to develop, to grow, and also be willing to wait. Some of us are not willing to wait, and that's the reason that God cannot use us properly. Because we're trying to rush. We feel we have the knowledge and we're trying to rush. And I want to help you out. You might have to step away so you can serve better. That means having the real conversations with your church, talking to them and saying, listen, there are some things that I need to pray over. I need to step away. You need your pastor to commune with the Lord. And I'm not talking about early in the morning just for a moment. I'm talking about some time where you can be refreshed, renewed, and refilled. And allow God to speak to you about those things that concern you. Because here it is. It is hard to lead the church and you feel like your family is in disarray because you're losing there. You're gaining at the church, but you're losing in your family. You need God to put you at a place where you can understand the steps that needs to be made. It is hard when you love the church to love on your family adequately, but feel like you are serving inadequately in church. It's a reality. It is hard when all of your bills are due. Can we be honest? All of your bills are due. And you are figuring out how you're going to pay your next bill. But here it is. You're having to help others pay their bills. There's enough fun for everyone else, but none for you. And I just want to challenge you. Acknowledge the hit. Be willing to be honest enough to say, this one hurt. Create vulnerable spaces Start selecting the folk to be in your inner circle that you can be real with. And then step away so you can serve. Take some time out so you can get back in the place where you need to be, so you can find that passion again. You understand your purpose fully. You can go fully back into it. Understand it. Listen, as we get ready to leave, I want to invite you. I'm getting ready to do I'm getting ready. Well, I've already started the program. I've already got some brothers joining in. This is what I want to do. I want to walk with you. This is something completely confidential. This is one-on-one. This is not a group setting. We'll be looking to do group settings in the future, but this is a one-on-one thing where I want to walk with you and I want to go with you through the process of prioritizing your private world and making sure that you are not balancing work and life, but harmonizing work and life. Because here it is. The problem is with balancing is something's always going to take up a little bit more pressure. But when you prioritize, that means that I stop weighing the scale on how do I handle both, and I start realizing in this moment my marriage might be way more important than the ministry. In this moment, the marriage is doing well, and I've invested enough in the marriage that I can do the work I need to do in the ministry and be gone for ministry, that it does not tear down the marriage, that I am so connected that my work is able to handle the times that I am gone, and I'm able to do what I need to do. And so we want to talk about break down the schedule, tell you a few things that we're going to do with this, and then we'll get ready to get off. Here's some of the things that we're going to do with this. And if you know someone that needs it, I am telling you, send them the link. I'm going to put the link in the description. I'm going to put the link in the comment. Here's what I want you to do. Let them know that there's somebody that cares for leaders, pastors especially. I've had the privilege of working with businessmen. I've had the privilege of working with coaches. I've had the privilege of working with leaders, but I want to work directly with pastors. Right now, this one is for the pastors. And what I want to do, this is what I want to do. If you know somebody that needs it, whether they be a pastor, leader, make sure you connect this. You share this video with them because you care about them. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take some time out, and we are going to first figure out the areas that you already know are not going right, but we're going to figure out why they're not going right. Then we're going to strategically put together a plan to help you to tackle and to address these areas. Then we're going to make sure that as we are not just putting together a plan for you to address these areas, we're putting a plan together for you to maintain your own mentality. The struggle that we have in ministry is that we're always pouring and our cups are never being refilled. I want to make sure as a leader, you are being refilled. As a businessman, you are being refilled. As a father, you are being refilled. As a husband, you are being refilled. That we are able to vocalize what we need from our churches, from our marriage, from our ministries, from our children, so we can give them what they need. It is hard to love on folk when you feel like you are losing all the time. And I want to help you go through this process. I want to walk with you in this process. And here's what I can guarantee you. That when you walk away, you will know not just your purpose, but here it is. You're going to know your objective in maintaining these areas of your life. You're not just going to be trying to live through this marriage. You're not just going to try to be loving these people until the next church comes. You know that. Listen, can we be honest? You're not just going to try to love them until the next church comes. You're going to be intentional in every move that you make. I'm excited to work with you. We're going to put it in the comments. Thank you for joining me tonight. Love you all. Have a great 3-day weekend. I know we are remembering those that we have lost, but I also want to challenge you to take some time out for yourself, because the truth of the matter is, you cannot help anyone if you are draining yourself for everyone. Did you hear me? You cannot help anyone if you are continually draining yourself for everyone. Have a phenomenal night. Thank you for joining us. We love you, we care for you, and we are continually there for you.